in response, you see what is missing. The other end of the spectrum was Mr. Hester, who was teaching in the same to the same kind of kids, who were also from broken families, who were also from a poor part of the country. And what he did is actually create kind of like a contract with those children, create expectations from those children, and said, okay, if you just follow this program, if you want to be successful in life, you will need to do what I say. You will need to do this and do that, and not question me. I have this expectation. If you don't live up to these expectations, you will be penalized. And this kind of structures is helping, because actually it creates something outside of yourself, something that you have a responsibility to. So they have a responsibility with their teacher initially, but then they realize that basically they are responsible for their own lives. So because they are responsible for their own lives, they come to realize, okay, actually, I'm on my way to become an adult. But that's completely different from what you saw from those black kids that were being talked to from the motivational speaker. They have so little self-esteem, so little desire to become part of that society, to grow up, to become an adult, that they didn't even try to do the test. They didn't even try to do the test because they don't care. They just like to make jokes and just live in the moment and don't worry about tomorrow. Which is very, very dangerous for a society, I think, and for the kids themselves, of course.
You mean no hope?
Very little hope. Now, okay, I mean, I was also late to grow up, basically, so it can always start, but yeah, but there is very little hope, because for a lot of kids it will be too late. By the time they're 15, 16, there will be people in their environment who have asked them to basically become part of a gang, or to engage in petty crime, or and then it's too late. They have derailed. They become part of the criminal system, go to jail. Their role models will be even worse than what they have in school, and it will be too late. So that's a very, very risky, a vicious cycle that these kids are in those purely individualistic societies. And we see that in the States, but it's not only in the States. It's also, like, for example, countries like Mexico, where at the moment there is a lot of lawlessness. We see that in other parts of the world. In Africa, it's also like that. Africa has much more of a social fabric. It's much more collectivist, but people really don't take any responsibility there.
Oh,
They
really?
don't take any.
Africa.
They don't take any responsibility for their own lives.
You mean Cameroon?
In
Some
Cameroon,
countries
well,
affected.
I've only been to Eastern Africa,
Oh,
Eastern, South, like North, East, South. But in all those countries, you really find that, okay, if you're rich, you have responsibility to your people, to the people around you, to your family, to your neighbors, to everybody in your circle. You have responsibility to share your wealth. But there are a number of people who do that because that makes them feel good. It's the same as Warren Buffett is doing, basically, but on a much smaller scale. So they have altruistic tendencies, and there are a lot of people just holding up their hand and say, "Okay, give me money, give me money, give me money," and they don't feel any inclination to work, because tomorrow they will ask again for money, and the day after that again they will ask for money. And because only that day counts. They don't really worry about next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now. Nobody is really concerned about it.
You mean Africa?
Yeah. But I mean, that also, like, I was kind of struggling with that idea because I was hoping to find much more hope, much more people who were really struggling to survive and to get by. but actually, as soon as people go a little bit above the poverty line, their motivation is really like coming to a halt, and they're not motivated. They have a little money, they take a few days off and relax and enjoy life, just sleeping under a tree, and not do anything, not invest in their future, not save their money or something. They just have a little money. They go out drinking at night. That's their idea, which I thought, but that's really hopeless. But then I realized actually that during the Industrial Revolution, economists also wrote about society, and what they said is that basically, if you are the owner of a factory, you should never pay your workers more than the minimum wage. And why is that? Because as soon as people get more than the minimum wage, they will not come back to work. They will drink. They will basically get in trouble. So it's better for the people themselves if you give them minimum wage, because you will have a constant stream of labor that you can use, and they will not get into trouble because they can only worry about survival. So you need to keep people in survival mode. Well, that's actually the situation that they are right now in Africa. So the people are in survival mode in large parts of Africa, and well, it's been almost 25 years ago that since been there. So I don't know whether it's changed a lot, but it also makes sense, like, because people know that their future is not very stable. In Japan, we can kind of know that this country is still stable in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So there's reason to invest in yourself in the future, because you know the future is safe. But in Africa, the future is very unclear. It could change like from day to day. A plague could break out. It could be hunger. It could be a war. That's the reality. So if you are very uncertain about the future, would you really do your best in school to make the best out of life? If you know that there's a very big chance that you might actually end up in a war and you might be killed, or that the money that you make is being stolen from you, or it makes people a little bit like phlegmatic. I think that's not English. Makes people it makes them a little bit like passive, waiting for things to happen, not really, but taking a step-by-step approach, taking a long-term approach, but making a very short-term approach and not being ambitious to actually improve their lives.
It's the same phenomena in American black people. Right?
Yeah.
Why black people so much? They don't have future promise or sort of.
Well, I think that the situation in the US is a little bit different from the situation in Africa, but I don't know this for a fact. I just thought about it, and this is what I think is the reason, is that basically the more stable the situation you're in, the more likely it is that your environment will not change drastically. The more likely you are to invest in your future, because you can see the future. The future is rather certain. So if you can see the future, if you can forecast the future, then making investments is logical. If you can, well, I shouldn't be talking to you, but for most people, if they can't tell the future is very uncertain. They don't invest. They rather keep their money in to themselves, and they wait until they are more certain and make long-term investments.
It means the same as America.
So for a lot of black people, they are relatively have lower incomes. They live in areas with other people that have lower incomes. There is more crime. There is education is not as good as it is in other parts of the country. It is and then actually, so they're having the physical difference, the physical different appearance, it very easily to kind of like equal these two, like poverty, bad situation, and the color of your skin. So there comes us versus them, and that if that becomes too big in society, then people start to group around these physical characters. So black people versus white people versus Mexican people.
What is the solution for that?
So in the Netherlands, we make the solution that we don't allow for white schools or black schools.
What do you
We
mean
make it
no
mandatory
segregation?
to
no segregation?
no segregation. So I will show you a video later about basically exactly this point. So how to deal with this segregation in life. There are a lot of people concerned about segregation, and they put their children, even though they're white, they're Dutch, but they don't want their children to be in an all-white school because they feel that that's not how society works. And
But the difficulty is the other one is very poor. The other one is ordinary people, very difficult to commingle.
we're doing it. They're both kids, they should.
But the other one is very poor.
Well, okay, so in the Netherlands we don't have people who are very poor.
No, America is very poor. They
Yeah,
cannot
that's possible.
They can pay money for lunch.
Hmm.
How they going to handle equality with each other? Right? They cannot talk each other. And
Did I show the
black
video
people,
already?
yeah, black people on weekend they are staying home, but the white people weekend go outside. But it's a big gap.